And with that out the way, we could start the show. Shortbox Nation, without any more ado, let's talk about YouTube. Let's talk about comics, and let's welcome a new friend to the show. Let's give it up for Brandon Jackson, aka Mr. BJ Kicks. Oh, that came in hot. What up, BJ? They're excited to see you.
What's up? I love we're in front of a live studio audience.
That's the vibe I try to bring, because if we were, they would be, there would be that roaring applause for you.
I feel like it'd be like, who?
Kicks who? Mr. Kicks who? Why is he kicking people? BJ, this is I'm so glad to finally be able to return the favor and have you on the short box. You were kind enough to have me on Comics Are Dope a couple months ago, and I feel like I've given you every excuse in the book as to why we needed to push out this interview and things like that. But glad we can make this happen. How are you doing, good sir? Happy belated birthday, by the way. By the time this episode comes out, you'll be whatever age you are now for the last week. So happy belated B-Day to you. How are you feeling?
I'm good, man. It's my Shaq year. I got to be the most dominant. Got to dominate. Got to be better. Got to be bigger, faster, stronger. But yeah, no, I feel good. I feel good. So it's yeah, I don't know. I'm another year older. I feel like nothing really matters except the fact that we've got this new baby coming.
There we go.
So at this point, we're like maybe 2 weeks away.
Oh wow!
By the time this comes out, yeah, she'll be here like in a few days.
Wow! So congratulations, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So yeah.
How much more nervous and or confident do you feel going into baby number 2? Do you feel like you got a good handle on it? It's like, I've already done it once.
Well, this is actually baby number 3. So I've got a
14. Oh, whoa. Okay. Wow.
Well,
you're a pro at this, bro. Yeah.
What's funny is like, you kind of can tell like you're in for something based on other people's reactions, right? Yeah. Like, when I'm like, yeah, man, I'm 30. We still live with my mom. People are like, oh yeah, that's typical. I'm like, yeah, man, I got 3 kids. They're like, whoa, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah. But, you really love kids, huh? Or at least the process of kids, making kids.
At least. But yeah,
that's great.
So I'm not crazy nervous. We just bought a house. I think.
Yeah, congratulations, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So from New York Comic Con to like a week ago, I had just been swamped, a wreck, and like we're just now kind of starting to feel settled. Like, and I think it's at the perfect time. So once this new one comes in, I don't really feel nervous. People keep telling me I'm not going to sleep. I'm like, I didn't sleep the last time or the time before that. So
man, I feel like at this point you got to be tired of hearing that same thing. It's like, I already have 2 kids. I don't know what sleep is. I haven't known what sleep is for the past 5 years.
Right. So, but yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. 3 girls. So that's cool.
Wow. I have any of them shown, or I guess the 2 now, have any of them shown any, 1, how old are they? And then 2, have any of them shown any interest in comics or any of the things, in your room?
Yeah. So, I got a 14-year-old, and, without rehashing the story for the 19th time, I got into comics because of her, right? I took her to a free comic book day event. So because she's an artist. And so I was like, okay, well, I want you to meet people that are doing art for a living, or at least for like a side hustle or whatever. So that's what got me to walk into a comic shop for the first time. And she's kind of been in and out of it. She likes comics. She like most of the time if she's reading something, it's one of those like scholastic graphic novels. I have to like force her to read real books, or prose books. But yeah, she's in and out because she's not a huge fan of superheroes. And then the 3-year-old, she's more so interested in my action figures, like anything that's in here,
the expensive stuff.
Right. So they haven't made it out onto the walls in the new spot yet, but yeah.
When did this trip to the comic shop? You said it was your first time walking into a comic shop. I know that you've been podcasting with Comics Are Dope for like the last 5 years. You've already, kudos to you. I think the channel's doing great things. I think that, your numbers are up. I mean, it's to me a very successful YouTube channel. I know it's only been about 5 years, and I'm assuming that's maybe around the same time your comic journey started as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was for whatever I was looking at my DC Universe Infinite stuff,
Hmm.
and I've been on DC Universe Infinite since 2018. I
Okay.
didn't pick up my first that free comic book day we went to was 2019. And then I started the channel November 2020. So it was like because we were pregnant. I found out we were pregnant in October 2020, and it was like I had just really started getting in the habit of buying comics like every week. And I was
Okay.
like, well, I'm either going to be able to buy comics or diapers unless I make something happen. So that's when I started the channel.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I can respect that. I feel like every comic fan at some point comes to that crossroad where they're like, how do I maintain this hobby slash obsession? And most of us, a lot of us, I think about, can I work at the comic shop for comics? Or at this point, I guess, the equivalent of that in this day and age is, can I start a YouTube or podcast to convince other people to pay me to buy comics and whatnot? I'm glad it's going well for you. And I guess while we're on this train of thought, BJ, do you remember your first like conscious exposure to comic books? Like, do you remember the first comic book you got, or what? The earliest example of you interacting with a comic.
Yeah, I so the earliest I remember was at my grandmother's house in Queens, and my uncle, for whatever reason, was like living with my grandmother for a time, even though he had like a huge salary job. I don't know, but
Hmm.
anyway, he one of his friends, I don't know if he worked at a comic shop or what, but one day he comes to the house with like this Rite Aid bags full of comics, and now that I'm like remembering back, I can remember some of the covers and stuff, and it's like all of this is like dollar bin fodder, even in like
Yeah.
97 or whenever this was.
Look, you were a kid. You wasn't gonna give you like the good stuff. Like
Exactly
let them break the dollar comics. If they take care of the dollar comics, I give them the $5 comics, and maybe one day we get into double digit comics.
right. So it was like it was me, all the cousins. We would descend on my grandmother's house for like 3 weeks out of the summer. So it was
Hmm.
me and like four other guys, my brother, my two older cousins, and we're like just kind of fighting over which ones we're gonna take. Like I don't really remember reading any of them. I would grab them based on the cover. My favorite was always Batman. And but I love a good Spider-Man cover. I was never a big fan of Superman back then, but
Hmm.
if the cover was good, which a lot of this like late 90s, early 2000s stuff, it all looked really cool. So, yeah, that's the first exposure I remember. And then I didn't really get comics again until 2019.
Wow. 2019. And then I guess what was the motivation to start a YouTube channel of all things? I mean, I'm here in 2020, which kind of coincides with what I feel was a big year for
Mhm.
obvious reasons, the lockdown, the pandemic, people just having more time on their hand, being at home more, a lot more people making the shift to online communities and finding friends and community online. So I'm assuming you were part of that kind of wave of like and I don't mean this disparagingly, but like COVID creators, people that were like, okay, I've got time now. Let me start a YouTube channel. Let me, dive into like this hobby that I've been thinking about doing. I guess what was the inception of Comics Are Dope? What was what was that about?
Yeah, so I had already been a YouTuber. I guess now I still have the channel, but I had a music marketing channel on YouTube.
Hmm.
Now that channel has like 40 some thousand subscribers. But at the time, I think I had just crossed 10,000. I had written a book.
Oh
All
wow,
the
I didn't know
stuff
that.
like was going like the course that I had created was being taught on college campuses. Like there was a lot of stuff going with KDMR Music, as it was called, and
Hmm.
Master Music Marketing, as the course was called. But during the pandemic, they shut down the live music industry. And I was in the middle of rewriting or amending the book, expanding the book, because I wanted to do like a proper hardcover release
Wow.
and then have that coincide with like a big like online course launch. And when they shut down the live music industry, it was like, well, I can't ask people to pay $300, $400, $500 for a course, and then I know they're not going to be able to recoup that because the industry's at a standstill. And so I was like, well, I'll just kind of pause that. And at the same time, because I had an interview podcast and everything, and so I've got these episodes, but it's like I don't really want to release this episode if these people can't act on it. So and I was kind of getting disillusioned with it as well because we
Hmm.
had just um well, now we just found out we were pregnant. I was getting disillusioned, so I was like, all right, I was tired of like having to be so polished because when you're doing educational content, you can't be like,
Oh yeah.
you can't stutter. Like, you got to like really know and
Mm.
present stuff every single week. So I was like, well, I'm going to do like videos about comics. And it was really supposed to be kind of a variety channel. So that's why when I started the channel, it was just called BJ Kicks, which was just a screen name I've had forever. And yeah, I was like, I want to just kind of make videos for fun. So if you actually look at the first video on the channel, I'm like, hey, you know, this is going to be my channel where I talk about like comics and then like beat making and just whatever is fun. And then I never ended up talking about beat making. So at the same time, because of COVID, um, well, not even just because of COVID, because before COVID, my shop had started doing these live sales on Facebook.
Mhm.
And they had a Facebook group where the sales would take place. And so what I'd be doing, I'd be like basically doing like community management, kind of engagement type stuff, unprompted. Like, oh, hey, I grabbed this book the other day and I got this. And what do you guys think of that? Because I was just craving community. And after a while, it was like, okay, I'm kind of taking over these people's group, like, and they're just trying to sell comics. And so I need to have something of my own if I want to foster this sort of community that we have. And so that's what I did. I started the channel, started a Facebook group, and that became my outlet and once COVID hit, it just kind of
Hmm.
took off. Like COVID had hit, and then I had a baby in the NICU, and like just kind of like out of compulsion, I'm like, I got to make a video every day so that I'm not thinking about my kid
Yeah,
like
yeah.
tubes and stuff in the hospital.
Wow. So, at what point did you decide, okay, this comics channel is worth investing all my time and growth, and I'm gonna completely kind of like move away from the music marketing and the educational thing?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever said it's worth the investment, right? From a financial standpoint,
No,
like
no, not at all. That is one thing I try to get across, is like when you hear podcasts, especially indie podcasters, ask for patrons, support, sponsors. It's like you got to understand, a lot of us are just trying to break even. And any money that we do get probably goes into equipment or, hosting fees or website things. So much cost, behind the scenes cost, that I think the average listener isn't really aware of when it comes to like what it takes to create a consistent quality show. So yeah, I feel you there. You don't make the decision to do a podcast on a weekly basis for the finance or the money or the fame.
right, right. But yeah, I mean, it was really just kind of a lifestyle decision for
Hmm.
me. I was, like I said, kind of growing disillusioned, disenchanted with the music industry. But I still loved making like multimedia, like video editing,
Yeah.
podcasting, all of it. Like I just enjoyed doing it. So like if I wasn't doing this, I might have like a cooking channel or a sneaker channel or whatever. Like it'd be something. And I just decided, I don't know, like comics are just fun. I think what this has that nothing else has is more of a sense of community than utility. Like if I got a sneaker channel, you're watching me because you just want to see the shoe because you're not going to see it anywhere else, or you want the release dates or whatever. If I have a cooking channel, you want a recipe. But like I have a comic channel, I don't have anything to offer you except my excitement about this book that I saw, and you have that same excitement. And so we can talk
Well
about
said. Well, and you know what, man? Th- that is an element to your show that I think we share, like kind of a kindred spirit here. Is that you? Trying to figure out how to phrase this without upsetting anyone, but you cater to the comic fan and comic reader,
Mhm.
where you could, like if you wanted to make the financial decision, then your content would be about CGC grading, flipping, like that. To me, is if you want to make money in comic YouTube or comic podcasting, that is probably your best bet. But the fact that you're focusing on the stories, the creators, highlighting like what you're reading and coming at from that angle, I think I think speaks to me personally, because that's what I've always kind of formed or try to have like the focus of the short box be. So that is something I definitely tip my hat off to you. Like it's not the easy road for sure. Like it's definitely more of an uphill thing, because now you're talking about a very niche group of comic fans that also want to hear interviews and hear thoughts and opinions on comics, and that's not always, it's definitely not, like we've been saying, like the financially smart move to do.
For sure. Yeah, we're a niche of a niche, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Same. So tell me about. I don't think we had a chance to establish that you are based out of North Carolina. Talk about your comic shop. What's the name of your shop? Where is that at?
Yeah, so I shop at Fight or Flight Comics here in Raleigh. For those listening, they're inside the Triangle Town Center Mall. If you walk in through the food court, you make a left at the Cinnabon. They're right there next to Hollister. It's like weird perfume smell, new comic book smell. It's
Ooh.
great.
And I mean, I guess a Cinnabon smell too, right? Or is that a perfume shop? Is that what you're saying?
No, Cinnabon. I'm at Hollister. Hollister still smells.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. That is a very interesting place for a comic shop to be sandwiched in between. But I think the Cinnabon is probably where I'd go immediately after picking up my books.
For sure.
Okay, so Fight or Flight Comics, you've been shopping there since you got back into comics 2019, 2020. But I also know that they are a sponsor of the show, which, much like the Short Box, my local comic shop is a big sponsor of the show. And I mean, do you find, is there a sense of pride that comes with that for you as well? Where it's like, I feel like it's a symbiotic relationship with me and my comic shop where, it's like, Ben, my audience is your target demo. Now, granted, I think there's a layer where it's like he also wants people that are going to be in the shop that are probably Jax based. Luckily, I think a majority of my listeners are still based out of Jax, but it's a symbiotic thing, man. And it's probably my favorite sponsor that I've had throughout the years because he's someone that's passionate about comics, that wants to see the show succeed. Because if the show succeeds, then there's residuals that people that go to the shop to visit him, and vice versa. Like, do you have kind of like that same relationship with your shop? And I guess, are you guys doing any cool things with the show and vice versa?
Yeah, I've been shopping at, what is now Fight or Flight Comics since I started reading comics. Like, that was the shop I walked into on Free Comic Book Day. But right before COVID, they merged with another shop. So Fight or Flight was the old shop's name. They were Ultimate Comics Raleigh for the longest, and then they just kind of recently went independent again. But right before COVID, when they merged, that's when I met the owner, Dan, and Casey. They owned it together. And they've always had like a very uniquely friendly vibe. Like, there's no like comic shop guy antics. And I don't even know if Dan will remember like the first time we met, but I do, because it was like I picked up a Black Panther book and he just immediately starts going on about how like he didn't like that run versus the other run. It's like, yeah, I'm more of a Hudlin fan, but da 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 da. And it was funny because he talks to you about comics as if you've read every comic in existence.
Yeah,
he has. And so we kind of hit it off then. So for us to have this like official working relationship, because he was there at the beginning of all this, and so he's always like, "Oh, B, I'm so proud of you," blah blah blah.
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's fun to be able to kind of put on for the shop. Like, there's a whole other story that I wouldn't be comfortable putting out there publicly, but we could talk later. But
Sure.
For us to have this working relationship has been really cool. And it's also fun, like, because I'll hear stories like I'm never in the shop at the same time as like someone that watches the channel. Or like they'll come by and be like, "Oh yeah, I heard BJ shops here, blah, 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 blah." Trying to guess what day I come in. Like, it's funny stuff. But
That's
it's fun
awesome.
to be able to like kind of shine a light because they're such good people.
Man, that is well said. It does feel like, I mean, Ben and the entire team at Gotham City Limit here, they are great people and they're so passionate about comics. And like like I said, even if I don't know, man, it's just something about wanting to, like you said, put on for Gotham, for the city as well, and then also for the comic community. I think because of my partnership with of Gotham City Limit, it has motivated me more than I probably would have on my own to be more involved in the comic community. Try to be at like the local conventions, teaming up with, Collective Con, and, attending the events that Ben throws, giving him ideas or him giving me ideas, or being involved with like the interviews. And it's nice that, when they also celebrate your wins, because they get it, right? Like when you have someone like a Tom King on, they get like, man, the amount of work that probably went into it, the recognition that comes with it, the scale. So Yeah, man. I guess this is just us kind of going on about our local comic shops and how great that is. But yeah, dude, what you said about community being a very special thing in comics. I, as someone that is in, that has a plethora of hobbies, almost like too many hobbies, not enough time. I'm into record collecting. I was really into sneakers at some point. And then obviously comics. There is no other community like the comic community. And, just everyone's passion for reading and storytelling and art. I think it just, it's like all these great elements to make for like a really good community. Now, obviously, like, there's a couple of bad eggs out there, but I'm saying like what community doesn't, but there is something about like the comic book reader community that I just find so special.
Yeah, for sure. Like they're passionate in a way that, like, I mean, we're music heads, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's like a pride that comes with being able to like put somebody on to
Yeah.
like before, like we were talking about the J. Cole Inevitable series. Like I remember specifically, I remember when I like learned about who Drake was, and I remember when I learned about who J. Cole was. And it was just like, oh snap. And there's that feeling before the guy gets big.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me and like 3 of my friends that know about this, and we're cooler than you, right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
but even that is not the same feeling as like, there's me and maybe 2 other people that I'll see at this comic shop once a week. And we know that this Storm book is amazing. And 5 years from now, when they make a Storm movie, we'll be like, oh yeah, it was that series. I told y'all to get on it.
Yeah. It is. There is something that comic shop, especially when you have that experience at a comic shop. Like it's just it's so perfect. Like the ability to just connect with someone instantly because you both enjoyed, a particular title or a series, or you're both fans of like a particular artist that maybe isn't like recognized on a larger scale. Just being able to connect with people because of stories. There's just something very, I don't know, like primal about it. I won't get too like flowery about it, but BJ, I want to take a quick, a very harsh turn and pivot into another topic that I've been kind of like dying to talk to you about.
Okay.
You mentioned that you guys have just moved into a house. Congratulations, by the way. We're actually me and my wife. That's one of our big goals this year is to finally move out of our apartment, which we love. We've been here for like 5 years, but it's time for us to get a bigger place to own a home, become homeowners. So that's like top of our 2025 goals. And I know that you've moved, and then you've also managed to find time to release videos and still put out content on a regular basis. And a couple weeks ago, I'm assuming at the end of your move, you recorded a video that you titled. I want to make sure that it's right. Where's it at? I'll cut this part out. Where's it at? Oh man, Rita, you put out a lot of videos.
My bad, man.
Oh, okay. It was called "I'm Breaking Up with Single Issues," which I kind of already had. You put this video out 2 weeks ago, and it was about your experience having to move all of your comics into your new place. And I gotta say, I think a move is when comic collectors are made or broken. That's when you realize how heavy a short box is or a long box. That's when you get an idea of how much stuff you truly have. And you realize, yeah, a shelf full of omnibuses looks cool, but when it's time to move them, my back is the one that's paying the price. And when you got to carry those boxes up and down stairs too, you know what I'm saying? Like you start questioning if you're really made for this comic collecting culture, comic culture and being a comic collector. So I'm just, highly advise folks check out the video. Like I said, the title of the video is funny and it'll catch your attention. But just curious, like what did you? I guess if you could recap some of the points from that video, but then also maybe talk about how your relationship with collecting has changed after your move. Because I think you mentioned, when you got back into comics 2019, 2020, as well as the launch of the video, it sounded like you really got into this hobby and this culture. You had, the pull list, you were buying books every week. How has that changed now that you're moved in, you just finished moving, you got a third kid on the way?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like, and I kind of say this in the video, but forever, my relationship with comics has been, how much can I afford to buy? right? And I've got like hard lines, like I'm not going to put stuff on credit. And even the pull list, my weekly show I do about all the comics coming out. Every episode is like, all right, let me try to stick to a $50 budget limit this week. And moving, not just moving, but like the whole 2 to 3 months before, like really kind of showed me like how much time I have and don't have.
Well,
And it's like, I've
preach
been
it.
like, can I afford these books? And it's like, it's not really about whether or not I can afford them. It's like, do I have the time to enjoy these like I should? And then on top of that, do I have the space for it? So, I for the longest time I've been buying stuff, and we had been apartment living been married 11 years in April. And so for our entire marriage, it's been like one day we're going to build the nice big house and everything is going to have its place and all this stuff. Like even right now, I got a bunch of posters. I had a bunch of posters like just all over the place because I have been buying posters. Like whenever I finally move, I'm going to have the coolest walls ever.
Bro, I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I swear everything you're saying, I either still kind of say or I have said. When I go to conventions, I am buying prints and posters left and right because I'm like, oh, well, this is a little easier to store. Oh, and when I move into the house, I mean, the frames I'm gonna buy for these, the collage I'm gonna set up. Like, yes, it is. Yeah, continue, please. But just know you're speaking the gospel right now.
Yeah, it's like, when I get the space, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And, now that I have moved, I put in all the shelves, right? First of all, before I moved, I took like one last video of my office and like there are just stacks of books on the floor. And it's like, it's all good because the new place is going to be bigger. I'm going to buy more shelves. It'll be great. So I buy the shelves first, move in all the shelves, and I put just the books that I own on the shelves. And I'm like, dang, I'm out of shelf space. And then I buy a couple more shelves, like squeeze a few more in. And I get every book shelved finally because I had stuff that was on the shelf, stuff that was on the floor. So now the floor books are on the shelf. Everything's there. And I'm like, I got room for like 12 more books here. And I'm going to live here forever. Like, what? And so there was that. But then there was also my single issue collection, which I had like a wire shelf and I had a bunch of short boxes on the wire shelf. And then I had a bunch of short boxes just under my desk. And then I had a bunch of short boxes behind me. And again, the whole thing is like, well, when we get the house, like there'll be room for all this stuff. And then you get the house and you realize how small the house is. And you're like, it's not that the house is small. The house is fine. You just got too much stuff.
Bingo. Exactly, man. That is, I felt like that video that you put out just came to me at the right time, Pardon me. Obviously 2 weeks ago, it's still January when we're recording, so I think it's safe to say that, like New Year's goals, resolutions is still at the top of my mind, considering that at the beginning of my January I got sick and it just kind of threw me off my whole feng shui, so I feel like I'm playing catch up. But I will say, even before January came, I just started having a like really honest conversations with myself about just being like a consumer, just like always, the things I buy, realizing that I don't, like you said, it's not a fact of like a matter of can I afford it. I feel like I do budget. I mean, I could be budgeting way better when it comes to like comics, toys, and statues. But like, it was more so a matter of time. It's like I am always, I always have a stack to read. But I'm having a hard time like finding time to get through because I've got work, I've got life, I've got the podcast to maintain, family, things like that. So, I've been having real conversations about, trying to find balance, both in the financial aspect of my, being a comic fan and the amount that I spend, being realistic with the time that I truly do have, and maybe focusing more on buying the things that I know I can make time for, or I really want. And then I feel like there's a third component to it: time, money, and space. Oh, and then space. To your point, man, like knowing that I'm going to be moving, I
Mhm.
am now looking at these things like I'm going to have to move this stuff, or even if I do hire people,
Mhm.
I still have to pack it. I still have to think about it. It's like, it's coming with me. I'm not
Mhm.
going to call it like, I mean, it's kind of like luggage, it's luggage that I've got to plan and think about. And that is valuable brain power that I kind of want to use for other things or just to like reclaim back. So I've been in this like mindset of like, do I need to be buying as many like all the comics I see and like, or do I really need to like practice discipline and things like that? The answer is yes, but that's kind of the vibe I've been on. So when I saw your video about, being a little more conscious and aware and present with your collection and your collecting habits, it really struck a chord.
It's tough, right? Like, so I made the big video, and I feel like for the first step is admitting the problem, right? And so I made the video, and people are like, okay, cool. Because the other thing that's been an issue for me is my channel. The thing that has been differentiating me from all my friends that do this is they all really cover collected editions, like mostly.
Mhm.
And I'm one of the few that'll talk about single issues from week to week. And I'm like, okay. And I like that aspect of it. Like, I like being on the front end of, hey, this is what's happening in comics right now. But I also hate that. Like, I feel like I do the comics a disservice when I'm like, yeah, man, Space Ghost #9's out this week. I haven't read it since issue 6, but I really like the first 6 issues, so I'm assuming issue 9 is going to be great, right? It's
Agreed.
like,
I have the same thoughts as well. Where it's like I don't want to just be saying platitudes or just placating,
right,
but it's also like I don't have time to read everything, and you start thinking about the series that like you fell off or this and that, and it's like, well, do I even have the right to say anything about it because I haven't read the whole story? And you start getting in your head.
yeah. So I'm trying to change the way I talk about comics
Hmm.
to more accurately reflect the way I interact with them. So,
Yeah.
with baby coming, there's no way I'm reading 12 books a week like I had been. So I'm gonna be doing more like collected edition stuff. But now I'm doing like a sort of top four, top 5. Here are the 5 books that I'm definitely trying to read ASAP. And then
Mhm.
I've got a fledgling 4, which makes me feel like Tyra Banks, like I've got 2 cards left. But
Throwback. That's good. Oh man, that just brought back so many memories of watching America's Next Top Model. Sometimes, because my sister just had it on, is like, man, this show sucks. Change it to cartoons, and then eventually, like, actually, who's gonna win this season?
right, right.
Being interested myself.
You're like,
Or
"Oh, the girly stuff," and you're like,
yeah,
"We were all rooting for you."
yeah. Actually, that'd be an awesome drop. We both have the Roadcaster. That would not be a bad drop. And in a completely random tangent, when you did your Shaq impersonation, one of my favorite Shaq quotes, which I cannot believe this man had the gall to utter this out of his mouth. But you remember when him and Kobe were having beef, and I want to say Shaq released either a diss record or he was at a club
He's
and
like,
someone
"No,
handed him the mic, and he was like, "Kobe, tell me how my ass tastes." I cannot tell you how many random times I've just thought about that. Like, this motherfucker really asked Kobe how his house tastes.
I love that. I love that he's freestyling, but then like,
Yeah.
he stumbles on that line and just loves it and just keeps like,
Oh, that's right,
now,
because he repeats it a few times. That's
right
right.
now this is
Oh
but
man. All right, that was completely random. To get back to what you were saying, actually, you were talking about some of the different types of videos and content that you make on your channel. And I guess I will say that my favorite series that you do are the new comic book day videos, which you typically drop on Tuesdays, correct? Those drop on Tuesdays?
they're supposed to come out Mondays, but
Okay.
Tuesday is more
Hey,
often at this point.
yeah, it happens sometimes. But what I appreciate about those videos, other than you kind of going through your pull list, which you're picking up that week, but it is the honesty and the approach that you take to talk about like budgeting. Like, this week, I'm doing a $50 budget. Here's
Mhm.
what my pull list looks like. I'm over $10. I got to, maybe put something back. The first time I had seen one of those videos and hearing you talk like that, it was just like a light bulb moment where I know I've probably talked about that on the podcast and talked about, spending money, but there's something so honest and personable about how you delivered it, where it was
Mhm.
like, damn, he's talking about, like, obviously as the comic fans, we all talk about the stories, the reactions, the big splash page or, that, but I don't know if we're always having the honest conversation about our budgets and, like, being kind of transparent, like, look, I'm not, I've only got $20 this week, and these books are damn expensive. So, this and that. So you've got the new comic book day videos. What are some other videos and series that you do with Comics Are Dope?
Yeah, so the pull list is, I guess, what we'd call the flagship show, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the new comic book day. Then Comics Are Dope, the podcast. That's the weekly interview show. That's those are the pillar content. You probably watch one or the other,
Sure.
and then between there, it's just whatever overviews, reviews, and stuff I can get into. Like whatever books I get my hands on, like something like the DC Comic Style Guide. It's like it doesn't fit in any other thing. So it's kind of
Man,
like,
I am here to admit, as much as I've talked up my local comic shop, I have not been in the shop once this year so far. Tomorrow, Friday, January 24th, I will be in the shop, and I am crossing my fingers and my toes. I am praying to every deity that Ben has received my DC Comic Style Guide, because I'm seeing friends like you, like Chris Hacker, post this book, and it looks so gorgeous. And I am willing, us talking about budget. Here I am talking about wanting to drop $100 on this damn hardcover book. Dude, I cannot wait to get a hold of it. How is that book in person?
It's great. It is. It is. So I walk in the shop, and that's kind of like the style. I knew this style guide was coming out, but I was like, $100. I probably should spend that on something else, right? So it just happens that the book dropped between Christmas and my birthday, and I just happen to have
nice. Yeah. Had a couple extra Washingtons in there.
And so I'm walking. I just kind of pause for a second. I'm looking at it, and Dan from across the room is like, "You need that," and I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And so I picked it up off the display, and he's like, "No, I got another one for you." And he comes and brings it still in the box, and I was like, "All right, cool." I'm just taking that home with me.
Really quick, did you know anything about this style guide or what it was?
So I've learned the myth of the style guide, right? Like back when I guess they had first solicited it, because they'd been talking about releasing this hardcover for a minute. But after the Super Friends cartoon, this is the 80s, licensing is a big deal. And so the company is like, we need a style guide. And so Jose Luis Garcia Lopez draws everything DC that you can imagine. And then they're like, hey, these are our standards and practices. This is how the logo should appear. This book is so amazing. Like there's even like the Pantone color swatches. Like this is what color Superman's costume is. Like, and it was an internal document, much like the Milestone Bible. If they ever do this with the Milestone Bible,
Man, BJ, I swear, I think I might have said this when I was on your show. I have a feeling my mom probably gave you up for adoption before I realized that we were brothers or something. All right, we are brothers from another mother, because the Milestone Bible is one of my holy grails.
right.
I feel like I don't have the typical holy grails. Obviously I would love a fucking ASM #1. Who wouldn't, right? But a lot of my comic holy grails are like artifacts, or just kind of like, the kind of off beaten path stuff. The Milestone Bible, when I first heard about that on the Milestone documentary, and it being kind of like the brand guideline or the style guide for Milestone, and that there's nothing, there's no semblance of it online, no scanned pages. Yeah, it's up there. So you're saying that this DC Comic Style Guide is kind of scratching that itch until we get the Milestone one?
Kind of. I mean, there ain't no black people in the DC style.
Not even Black Lightning?
You know what? There are. Let me look at this. I think there's some black people in here. Hold on.
Okay, I will filibuster while BJ is going to grab the book himself. BJ, if you're just joining us, BJ and I are talking about the DC Comics Style Guide, and we are trying to verify if there's any black people or brown people at this point. We'll take even brown people in the DC Comics Style Guide.
All right, so just looking at the cover, we got Cyborg as part of the new team.
Oh, come on, that's an easy one. I should have said Cyborg.
All right, let me look in the pages though. Let's look at the interior. Let's see what we got. We got, the Trinity has their own section. And so we get Bat Family, Superman Family.
Can you do me a favor? Can you hold the cover of the book up to the camera, just for our video watchers? Oh, and it's a pretty decent sized book. I'll have a link to the book in the show notes. I know you can. I think you can order it online off of one website. I
Yeah.
think it might still be available, but I'm holding out hope for it to be at my local comic shop. But Brandon, what I will say is that as someone who works in marketing full time, specifically in a brand department where that is all we talk about and worry
Hmm.
about is color, the right, logo placements, which is super nerdy and kind of boring, for my day job. But when it comes to comics, I am super excited to kind of like flip through that book and see all that art in there.
Yeah, I can confirm. Cyborg's the only representation we got.
Wow. Brenda, I guess on the topic of that, we're making lighthearted fun about that, but that is, on a serious note, that is something that is meaningful to you in terms of not only the videos you make and the comics you cover and the comics you celebrate and the creators you celebrate, but you are very big on celebrating, Black people as well as Black characters and just Black culture within comic books. Is there, I mean, outside of maybe the obvious, you yourself are a Black man, is there a particular reason why that motivates you to put a spotlight on that?
Not really. Like, so in school, I studied marketing, and then my minor was African American history.
Okay.
So, and then like, I don't know, Blackness has kind of been central to my experience in a way that I never really thought about. Right? Like, my grandmother's from Eastern North Carolina. Grew up on a farm. Um, ends up being like one of the first people. No, excuse me, the first person from anywhere near her area of color with a degree from an Ivy League school.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, so I went to, if anybody is from Raleigh, I went to New Bern Avenue Daycare, which is like the HBCU of daycares. Like, we in daycare learned the first two verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Like that,
Oh, wow.
we're singing this, we're not singing the Star Spangled Banner. Like, that's our
Yeah,
class,
yeah.
right? So like, I don't know. I've always been Black, and Blackness has always been central to my experience, but not in like a conspiracy brother type of way. Like, just yeah,
I know what you mean. Unfortunately, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
right. So it's just like that's kind of always been a thing, and
Cool.
I never really thought about it until I kind of discovered Milestone Comics. I remember seeing Static Shock as a kid and like just enjoying the show, but like,
Yeah.
I'm a kid of the 90s. Like, we grew up in like such a Black renaissance. Like,
Hmm.
it wasn't unique to see Black people on TV, even though Static was the first of its kind. But like, we had Martin and C Bear and Jamal and Fresh Prince.
Like
Like,
Lee movies,
right.
obviously, the 90s hip hop, being more commercial and everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah. So like, everything cool in my
for sure.
childhood was Black. So like, I never felt this sort of,
Hmm.
I don't know, what I never felt like excluded because
Cool.
of my Blackness. And I always grew up like around Black people, so I never thought about it. It wasn't until I got into comics where it's like, I got in maybe a couple years after Comicsgate had its heyday.
Hmm.
And so it's like you're still seeing the remnants of people online, like, kind of, and this is why they shouldn't let Black people write comics. And it's like, what did I walk into?
Yeah. When I
So
talked about like the bad eggs in comics, I think, those are the individuals that I don't think represent the best aspects of comics. But, it what community fandom and just in general, like, your community itself doesn't have like the folks that maybe have some backwards thinking.
yeah, so but yeah, so all that to say, it wasn't so much that I was like, I gotta put a spotlight on Black stuff. It
Hmm.
was just, after a while, it's like, I love this stuff so much, and no one else is talking about it
Hmm.
because it doesn't resonate with them the same necessarily. And so, if my little 15,000 subscribers is the only base that's going to hear about this stuff, then let me put on. Like,
Damn
let's
right. Yeah.
put on. And so that's where it comes from. It's just, these stories are great, and it's like, my favorite characters aren't even necessarily Black. Like, I do not like Jace Fox, right? Like, and just because a book is Black doesn't mean I'm gonna like enjoy it, appreciate it. Like I'm not like a
Yeah.
see black, buy black.
Well, yeah.
But it's like if it's good, like let's shout from the rooftops that it's good and it's for everyone. So
Well
yeah.
said. I love hearing that. Thank you. Uh, on the topic of the interviews and the guests that you've had on, I do want to hear about maybe some of the who have you had a chance to interview on the podcast, because that is one aspect that I do appreciate, is that not only you talk about the new comics, but you're also doing interviews. And I gotta say, for someone that has only been doing this YouTube channel for 5 years, and I guess like hearing your background in terms of marketing, the education, doing like educational videos, it makes sense why your interviews are really good and how you're able to compose yourself so well and ask these good questions. But who's been like standout interviews and guests that you've had on? And then I also want to hear like maybe like what's been the biggest lesson that you've gotten out of doing a comic YouTube channel? Like what has been like the impactful moments or conversations that have transformed your view about comic culture? I feel like I just gave you like a super compound question, but you're a professional. I know you can handle it.
Yeah, no, man, I do what I do. But nah, so I guess the Comics Are Dope podcast, we've been really fortunate because I started this 2 years ago. We did a trial run of a podcast early 2023.
And when you say are we talking just audio only or YouTube and video and audio?
So it was supposed to be audio only. So this is right around the time I rebranded. The channel was BJ Kicks and became Comics Are Dope later because I felt like I was a little bit too much of a character online and I just wanted to reel it in. So I wanted to be less about what I was buying and more about what I was enjoying. And so that's where the rebrand to Comics Are Dope came in. And then the podcast was supposed to be like this super intimate thing where it's like, I didn't know if it was going to be interviews, but it was just going to be real heartfelt conversations about maybe something I enjoyed. And it was kind of supposed to just be like, only the most dedicated people are going to listen to this. And so I can be super candid about it. And yeah, so that's where the podcast started. It was me. 1 second. But it was me and then a co-host, Skip and Tosh, who was like a moderator in our Discord and like on the channel. And so it was just kind of us going back and forth, like, here's what we like about comics, here's what we're reading. And then he had like pretty big Rolodex of comic creators. So he's like, I'm going to go in my archives
Oh, wow.
and find some people to talk about this stuff with. He was really excited about the podcast. And so I was like, all right, cool. Well, we'll do that. We do a few episodes and a couple months later, he passes away from cancer. And so it's just like, I'm not doing this show. But I took like 6 months off, and then Dynamite reaches out and they're like, hey, we want you to interview some of our creators. And I'm like, all right, well, sure. Like, cause nobody else has ever reached out to me. And a part of the first wave of creators, they're like, hey, here's who we've got, was Christopher Priest. And I'm like, what? Yes, I would absolutely love to talk about Christopher Priest or talk to Christopher Priest about anything. And so once we started that, because I started January 2024. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to do a podcast, it has to be weekly. And so I started doing the interviews. As far as notable guests, I mean, I think everybody's notable, but the people that like, you had told me 2 years ago that I'd have talked to any of these people, I'd be like, you're tripping. Christopher Priest, Dennis Cowan, Jeff Johns, Pete Tomasi, Francis Manipul.
Wow.
Gosh, who have we had? David Pepos.
Is
Go ahead.
Is there any of them that like really sticks out in terms of maybe something they said, a story they shared, or maybe like something about them that shifted your perspective about like this entire thing that is comics?
Yeah, so Dennis Cowan, I've been a big fan of. Like,
yeah, that's right. Well, talking about Milestone, yeah.
Exactly. So like Milestone, people are like, oh, I'm a big Vertigo guy, right? Like Milestone is that for me. Like I could just read Milestone comics for the rest of my life and be good. And I shouted them out like during the Milestone returns, like when the news thing came out.
Yep.
And he slides in my DMs like, yo, thank you for doing that feature. Like we really appreciate it and so on. And I'm like, that's crazy. And so I'd been a big fan, and then him reaching out to me like made me a bigger fan. So when we finally do the interview, I had talked to him like several times before, because even before the podcast, he like jumped in a live stream, like he was watching. And so I sent him the link and he was like, all right, cool, I'm here. And so he's always been someone that's shown love. And because we've spoken so often, I'm like, he should be the one guest where it's just like talking to an old friend. But
Yeah.
he's like the one guy that I'm still like nervous talking to, even in person. And I was trying to figure out like, what is that? Like, why am I nervous talking to Dennis Cowan? And I was talking to him, like the last interview we did was for his art book. And what I realized is like, Dennis is like the blackest man in comics. Like,
That's good.
if you ever see Dennis, he's usually wearing a Black Panther Party hat, right? Like, he's even, I have the original Milestone promo poster on my wall, and I was looking at it the other day. Static is wearing a Nation of Islam cap.
Oh wow! I don't think I've ever. Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
like, and like, you know, and even there are a few scans of the Milestone Bible out there, right? And Static is usually wearing like a Public Enemy hat.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like that sort of Chuck D militant type energy with Dennis, and you don't always necessarily see it in the comics, but when you talk to him, you feel it. And I think what I realized is like Dennis takes his responsibility very seriously. Like, yeah, it's comics. Like, this is fun. We do this because we love to do it. But he knows like the role or the space he occupies and like really tries to revere it. And so every time I talk to him, it's like, I gotta like put my best foot forward as somebody in this space. And so I think that's the one that sticks with me. Every time I talk to Dennis, I learn I learn a new way to be black.
Man, that's really well said. And you know, I think about that too, or I ask that same question too, where I'm like, I have done hundreds of interviews at this point. You know, and I still feel like I have difficulty being more relaxed during interviews. I always have like the jitters. It don't matter how much I prep, I am some level of nervous. And I think a lot of that is just just my personality. I'm kind of a nervous person. I've got like nervous energy to me, a little bit of anxiety. But I also think there's a respect factor there too, where we both respect the creators in comics so much, is that you're like, I not only respect this creator, but I also respect my platform, and I want to put this creator, help them get the word out, give them the proper spotlight. But then also, I think me and you both have a kindred thing where we are trying to give comics the reverence, and like, we don't want to just put junk out, like just not up to par quality content. I guess standards is probably what I could have said. I think we have standards when it comes to like the quality we put out, but then also wanting to just, I don't know, like, for lack of better terms, like to show that, hey, comics are dope, they are cool, like there is a cool factor to it. It's not, comic book, not everyone in this space is comic book guy. So I think that's where some of that nervousness comes from. It's where it's like, okay, I really want this to come off like a quality show, like a professional, and I want to make sure that the creator who knows I respect their craft, and I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, for sure. You want to put it in the best light.
Mhm.
There's also an aspect of this where it's like maybe 10 people will see this one. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so like, if only 10 people are going to watch it, what else is going to make it worth that creator's time?
Yeah, I definitely think about that too. And I have to remind myself something that I tell a lot of like newbie podcasters that I help with the podcast group that I run. And that's, don't get hung up on the numbers where you can. Obviously, like, there comes a point in time where you got to kind of figure out like, okay, certain episodes do better. Let me focus on, enhancing those episodes and really kind of upping my downloads. But when you think about it, even if an episode or an interview or something gets, let's say, 50 downloads or plays, which is kind of like average for audio only.
Mhm.
But what I like to try to reframe my perspective is like, if 50 people were in a room with me and this creator listening attentively, that's a huge win. 50 bodies in a room that are
Mhm.
like resonating with the conversation and really like tuned in, that's a huge honor. But it doesn't feel that way when you're looking at, in terms of podcast stats or YouTube stats. It's like, well, now my comparison is like these other shows that are getting thousands of play and I've only got 50, and you kind of feel like it's a loss. But
Mhm.
I think that's the beauty of especially like audio podcasting, is that you never really know who's listening and how that might resonate with them. And I think you've got to like view, if it just really resonates even with one person to go out and buy the book and help the cause of what the creator's doing, I think, it's a huge win. And that's like, I think that also goes back to that responsibility I was talking about, where it's like, it's, that is a huge responsibility to like even have the opportunity to help a creator get their story out there.
Yeah. Yeah. The weight of the platform,
Mhm.
right? And it's like I just want to best like one day I'm gonna be dead, right? My kids will sell off these comics, but somebody better keep paying the hosting fee for this RSS, right?
Dude, I think I definitely have thought about that too, where it's like this will be a very interesting time capsule when I'm like really old. I don't think the weight of it. I mean, I appreciate what I've been able to do since 2012. But I think the real weight of it will come in the next generation. My kids or my kids' kids or my nephews and their kids will hopefully be like, hopefully they won't just be like, wow, he was really fucking nerdy. Hopefully they'll be like, man, he was really passionate about this and he contributed something to it. But damn, we got really deep, BJ. We got like our creator existential bag.
Right.
So hopefully any other comic podcasters or whatnot kind of felt that. But to I guess on the topic, on a similar somewhat topic, what are some, I guess, common pitfalls that you see for like new creators? Like if you could go back to, to BJ episode 1 BJ and
Mhm.
give him some advice to avoid, to maybe speed up the process of getting where you're at now, or, if all of this time and effort that you've put in, like, I guess, what are some common pitfalls or common like rookie mistakes that you see with like new YouTubers?
Yeah. I feel like, lucky for me, I started the game at level 2. It's a
Hmm,
Drake quote, right? But I'd been successful on YouTube before this channel.
that's right.
I
That's
I
right.
came into it knowing what to do if I wanted YouTube success. And for me, I think that was actually the bigger mistake because I know that if something works well, you double down on it until you can't double down anymore. Then you move to the next thing that's working well.
Hmm.
Right. And for me, it was unboxing videos, like haul videos. And that stuff was really popular during the pandemic. That's why my channel went from like 0 to 2,000, I think something
Damn.
like 3 months. And then, at some point that kind of bubble popped and stuff started to slow down a little bit. But also, I felt like I had become a caricature of myself. Like, I am just doing whatever gets the clicks. And that's
Hmm.
not how I want to live my life, right? Like, the way I'm doing this, the whole point of this channel, again, was to have a space where I could just say whatever I wanted to say, show off whatever I thought was cool, and it not be like this high pressure situation. The whole thing was I was making money doing other stuff. So I didn't need this to make money. I just wanted to cover my comic book budget with
Yeah.
this. Um, so I think the big mistake I made early on was getting attached to this idea that this has to be the thing that blows up. And so I got to make a video every day and I got to buy like the big expensive thing that somebody else can't buy so that people will look at the channel. Or I got to do all the things. And it's like it works to a degree, but it's like at some point you're going to feel like you're just kind of keeping up with the Joneses
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and you get tired of, all right, I bought this big expensive thing. No, I didn't read the last 3 volumes of Uncanny X-Men, but it's the Uncanny X-Men. It hasn't been reprinted ever. So here we go. Let's do it. And it's just like you're filling up your house with stuff. You're spending way more money than you're making.
Hmm.
And it's like, do you even really care? Like, I love comics. Like all this stuff that I have it because I wanted it. But would I have bought it if I wasn't turning on a camera to show you that I opened it? Right. And it's like, that's the mistake. Um, going for too much too soon,
Hmm.
and then not knowing when to kind of pull back. But that's counter to what makes you successful on YouTube. Like, if you're just wanting to grow on YouTube, do everything I did, except it's not going to be what I did because there's new stuff that's popping
Yeah.
now. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a whole wave of like former TikTokers that were doing like numbers, just showing off stuff on TikTok. And now they've come into YouTube with like this super like lo-fi filmed on my phone new comic book day vlogs and getting views that I wish I could get on a new comic book day vlog.
Huh.
But but it's like it's working for them because they had an audience elsewhere and they're taking it to YouTube and people are just enjoying the kind of laid back lifestyle stuff. I know that if I did that, it would crash and burn. you know? So it's like whatever I'm doing probably isn't going to get you the results that you think it'll get you. So YouTube is one of those platforms where you kind of just have to stay on the cutting edge, or you got to do something that no one else is doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And well said. And I think, I think the point that 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 I got out of that was like sustainability. Because you're
mhm,
right, you can easily fall into this rat race of like where the numbers and mean the most to you. You become obsessed with it, the views, the retention rate, and you're following like, the next gimmick or the next trend. You're always like trend hopping. And I think that's how you get burnt out really quick. That's when you kind of lose the passion. I think that's when you start losing yourself. And I think because I started out as audio only, and I mean, I've been very slow to get into the YouTube thing. I really could be putting more effort into YouTube, but audio to me is like my comfort zone. It's my bread and butter. It's what I really like. So audio podcast is just it's just really different from like YouTube. And
mhm,
like, that there are trends and tricks to making your YouTube videos pop and, like a community and building your channel. I don't think a lot of those things technically are one for one or applied to audio podcasting. Audio podcasting to me is just a little more intimate
mhm,
because I think there's something about not seeing the person to where you don't really care about certain trends or things. It's like it's strictly an audio format. It's only me and the voice, telling the story. And I think that's why I have stuck to audio podcasting is because I just don't think I can get into the rat race that is YouTube. But I
mhm,
do salute anyone that is able to find a perfect middle ground in YouTube where it's like, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're knowledgeable about, and like setting up those healthy barriers of like, this is what I want to do. This,
mhm.
not what I have to do. And I think
Yeah.
you're a prime example of that.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, that's what I'm chasing. I'm trying to do what I want to do, right? Like if there's a legacy I'm trying to leave for my kids, it's
Mhm.
that you can make a decent living doing whatever you want to do. Like,
Yeah.
don't be out there being immoral, don't go crazy, whatever. But, you know, within reason,
Well said.
you don't have to like go slave away at a 9 to 5 job, right? And so it's like if I lose the 9 to 5 job just to become a slave to YouTube trends, it's like you missed the point.
Hmm. Yeah. All right, BJ. Let's pivot from here. We've been
Okay.
talking about just being fans of comics. Our pull list, our love of our local comic shop. I want to hear from you. What comics are you? What comics are on your pull list? What
Okay.
What are you enjoying? Have you read any really really good comics in the month of January so far that you would like to highlight?
Yeah. So this month is the catch up month. Storm is really good.
Okay.
I think we're on issue 4 now. But Storm, like Murewa Ayadele is doing with Lucas Wernick, there it's almost like an all-star Superman, but for Storm.
Oh wow.
And it is easily going to be the best series Storm has gotten as a solo act, right? Like, he says he wants it to go at least 30 issues. I think it should definitely go the distance, but that's really good. And we're only on issue 4, so you can jump in there. Um, I've been reading the Shadow Cabinet because I'm a big Milestone fan. I got to admit, right? Like with issue 3, I feel like we might be jumping the shark a little bit, but I don't know. It's a 4 issue mini. Each issue is 40 pages, so it's kind of like 8 issues worth of content total. But we'll see how this final issue goes, and like if they stick the landing. But Joe Illidge is writing that. Dennis Cowan did some art in the last issue. Daryl Banks is on that book with Adigun Ilhan. So that one's pretty good. Oh, by the way, sorry. This is going to be very black, right? Not even intentionally, but that's the stuff that I decided to catch up on first. So, let's see what else we got going on. Black Lightning is pretty good. They've got this thing going where it's like we're kind of getting almost like a mutants hated and feared subplot. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to see that in the DC book because I'm already reading X-Men, but so far so good, really good. That's Brandon Thomas and Fiko Osio.
I'm trying to keep up with all of the. I'm like trying to search for all these on League of Comic Geeks, and I'm obviously failing big time. But yes, this is indeed a very pro-black pull list right here. But it sounds like all these titles sound pretty damn fire. Really quick, when it comes to Black Lightning, did you ever watch the show?
No,
the WB show. I've heard like really good things about that show, and it just being like sincere. And just done well, and then obviously having a lot of like very strong and serious like messages and topics that they tackled, but like in a tasteful way, and still being like obviously like a superhero show. Is what I've heard.
I want to say the team that did Black Lightning is also the same team that did like Girlfriends and The Game and all that, right? So it's like
The Game, yo. I used to love The Game. That was my show.
That was my binge in college. I watched The Game all the time, but. So it's like that doesn't surprise me that it would have been good. I saw a compilation somebody put together of what's that albino dude's name?
From The Game?
Not from The Game. He's on Black Lightning. He's one of like the big bads in Black Lightning. But he's like a rapper or something. He's like Condon or Con.
Oh, I'm trying to. Okay. His name is I think he goes by Tobias Whale in the show, but his name is Crondon, and he is what group is he in? It's like a Stone's Throw or something. He is part of the group Strong Arm Steady. Okay, they've done a lot of things with like Mad Lib and Stone's Throw, I think.
Okay, so there's a compilation of like him just having like some of the most Uncle Ruckus lines ever.
I gotta find this now. That sounds great.
It's great.
Okay. So you've got Storm on the pull list. You've got Black Lightning. You've got the Milestone Shadow Cabinet. What else you got?
So pivoting out of African America.
Yeah, let's show White America some love. Come on, man. Right. Where are the white characters, Brandon?
So Chip Zdarsky's Batman run is coming to an end. And I'm of two minds about it. Like on one hand, I'm like, it's kind of been meddling on the pull list for a minute. But this last arc is really good. Like there's somebody else like claiming to be an heir to the Wayne fortune. Like I'm mad that we weren't getting this the whole time. Because, maybe Jim Lee wouldn't feel the need to interrupt the line. But
isn't that the truth? Man, I should be way more excited about Hush 2 than I am. But I just don't know what else is there to be said about, reopening that Hush series. I don't know why they didn't just do something like fresh or new. I mean, I get it. Obviously, it's to sell books, it's to sell units. It's like Jim Lee and Batman Hush. It just makes sense, and especially bringing back Jeff Loeb. But I don't know, man. I feel like I've kind of become disillusioned by those obvious money grabs. Will I pick up issue 1 or at least check out issue 1? Yeah, more than likely I probably will, because it'll be a moment. But I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not that crazy excited about it.
I feel like if you just said Jim Lee is taking over a story arc in the main Batman book, like that'd be enough to sell it. Like,
oh yeah,
I don't need it
for
to
sure.
Be to Hush at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not crazy excited about it. And maybe it's because I feel like Chip Zdarsky's run is just getting to like a better point. Like, I don't know. I feel like if you were going to do this, the best time to have done it would have been at the start of All In. Like, if going all in, everybody's getting new sort of jumping in points or whatever. Why not just have the Jim Lee story arc right then? As opposed to, okay, well, it's a new starting point, but it's actually the same writer, same creative team. And then 6 issues later, we'll do something else that's new. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But all that to say, Chip Zdarsky's run is good. I don't know how we're gonna look back on it, like when it's time to collect it in an omnibus or something, because there's a lot that's just like fine, but it's good right now. And then what else am I reading in white America? Appalachian comics. Let's see.
Appalachian comics has got a certain ring to it.
Right. It feels good. It feels good. I'm gonna leave it there. But now I'm still catching up. So Uncanny X-Men, I was loving before they started the crossover with regular X-Men. So I got to get back on that. Action Comics, John Ridley just started writing Action Comics, and
nice.
The first issue is fine. Like that, I feel like there's a little bit of twisting that he's doing with like Clark and Lois specifically. I'm like, this doesn't exactly feel like Clark and Lois. Like, I feel like Clark wouldn't say that. That I don't want to spoil it. This is not a spoiler. So there's a moment where Clark is like, the whole arc is about like this villain that Clark kind of showed mercy on earlier in Superman-dom, comes back and is like robbing a bank again. And so the whole story arc is kind of like this meta commentary on what causes people to reoffend. Like, why does somebody like on probation like end up back in jail? Like, what are the conditions that cause that? And is it like a greater societal issue? Is it just some people are just meant to be bad? Like, what is it? But there's a moment where Clark is like kind of talking to Lois about that whole concept. And he says something like, my brand is hope. Like, Lois says it, but then he says it also. And I'm like, that's not your brand. Like, that's who you are, Clark. Like, why? Clark wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But
that sounds kind of icky coming from him saying brand.
Yeah. Right. But it's a compelling story so far. So
I was about to say, I mean, everything prior to that sounded really good. It sounds like a really good like topic and conversation to like work through. Superman of all people.
Right. So I'm enjoying that. I mean, it's crazy. Like last time we talked, you were accusing me of being a Marvel shill, and now.
Well, I mean, you had the Marvel hat on. You had the Marvel. I think you had a Marvel hoodie on. You showed up today proper. You got the Batman hoodie on and the very appropriate dad hat, literal dad hat.
Right. I bought this. This is my hospital hat. And so we've been on baby watch. And so I end up wearing it like every day.
There we go. I mean, it makes for easy identification. Where's the dad? Oh, there it is right there. You're wearing a hat.
It's got the name tag.
All right. So, BJ, so real quick, what is the, I guess if you don't mind asking, and I feel like, I mean, you share it in the video anyway. So what is the, what's the new budget? What's the new weekly budget for new comics? Or is it weekly or monthly? Like what are you budgeting for new comic books now?
So I still don't want to go over $50 a week, right?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think more than fair. That's a $200 bill every month for comics.
Exactly.
And you know, I always try to think of things like at that monthly rate, and it's like, all right, can I pull back on that? You know, how many? You know, is that a possible vacation or trip in a couple months? But I think $50 a week is usually around where I hover. Some weeks a little less, but if I go in this week and they've got this DC Comics style guide, that is the whole month budget right there.
Right. Yeah. Like truthfully, I could probably afford more, but I don't have the time. That's 10 books a week, right? Like I just don't have time to read 10 single issues. So I'm gonna get more into trade paperbacks and stuff, but I still,
for sure,
overall, I don't want to be spending more than like, let's say, $350 a month on like all comics, and then everything else is like podcast fees, hosting fees, whatever.
Yeah.
All of my comic budget has to come from YouTube and like whatever sponsorships I can gather. So
that's fair. And I want to pivot to this other segment that I haven't had a chance to do in a while, and maybe it'll help you it'll either help you make better buying decisions, or it won't help you because then you'll just want to buy more comics. But I've been excited to do this segment, and I felt like bringing it back with you would be appropriate considering that, we are both sponsored by our local comic shop, and we're always looking for recommendations. And so I reached out to Ben Kingsbury, the owner of Gotham City Limit, and I asked him to send in 3 comic picks for the February 3rd FOC, meaning that you have to place your order with your comic shop by Monday, February 3rd, to have these comics ordered on time and in your pull list. But this is a segment that I used to do a lot, like every week. Ben would send in these recommendations. He'd pick 3 books from that are coming out in the future, and he would send in voicemails to talk about it. And I was like, you know what? I haven't done that in a while. And I think BJ might appreciate this as someone who talks about new comics on a weekly basis. So, BJ, I want to introduce you to Ben Kingsbury, the owner of Gotham City Limit. And this is his first voicemail and pick. Here we go.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Shortbox listener. I'm Ben K, representing Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville, Florida. It's time to take your comic book reading experience to the limit. First up, Mad Cave Studios presents Pop Kill #1 of a 4-part series. This sounds like an awesome story. 2 big brain cola executives separated at birth who will stop at nothing to make sure the other one ends up dead. Assassins, saboteurs, and espionage sounds twisted and delightful. Special bonus for anyone near Jacksonville, Florida. Writer Jimmy Palmiotti will be at the first Coast Con here in Jax on July 12th. So grab a copy and get it signed. Special bonus. Jimmy's wife, Amanda Connor, is doing the 1 in 10 incentive variant for Pop Kill, and she too will be at the first Coast Con. Now that's taking it to the limit.
All right, really quick. BJ, I think you're onto something. When we recorded the interview for your show, you said that, Botter, I've never met anyone that reps Jax or their home city as much as you do. And then I responded, I think that's a common thing among people from Jax. We're just very annoying about, representing anything for Jax. And I think Ben is case in point how he managed to work in that shameless plug for First Coast Comic Con, which I'm actually really excited about. It's a very young upstart comic convention. This will be their 2nd year, and they're already pulling in names like Jimmy Palmiotti. But just to recap what Ben recommended for this is Pop Kill #1. It comes out February 26th. Like I said, the FOC final order cutoff date is Monday, February 3rd. So this book comes out about 2 or 3 weeks after that. It's written by Dave Johnson, also of Jimmy Palmiotti, and the art by Juan Santa Cruz. I guess any thoughts on this one, BJ? How'd this one kind of hit your ear hearing Ben talk about it?
I was looking at the solicit, right? A world where 2 dominant and competing cola companies are owned by former Siamese twins who are now separated and hate each other so much they hire assassins, saboteurs, and espionage personnel to meddle with each other on a daily basis, right? Like,
only in comics could you kind of get that pitch line off. I mean, it could also be a movie, but it just makes sense for a comic because that sounds ridiculous. All of that.
Right.
Competing cola companies, Siamese twins, assassins, espionage. It's like, where else but only in comics are you going to get something crazy like that?
Right. And the more because I've been superhero out, right? Like that's my jam. I love superhero comics, but the more I go into it, it's like I feel like we've done a lot of these tricks so many times with superheroes. Like, how many times can Batman jump from the moon, right?
Yeah.
So hearing something like this, it just sounds so different. It's like, yeah, why not?
BJ, that is kind of where my headspace has been at lately. Is that I have been kind of disillusioned with the big 2 as of lately for those same kind of feelings. Where it's like, there's only so many, Spider-Man stories I can read that where it feels recycled. And with that said, not saying there isn't like gems within like the big 2, or I don't have big 2. I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man is on my pool, and it's always at the top of my pool every month. So I'm kind of contradicting myself, but I say all of that to say that what the indie comic scene, the indie publishers, your Mad Caves, your Boom, your Dynamite, etc., what they're doing with their premises and their stories, I think really shows you the power of comics. And to go back to what you said about, when you go to a shop and you meet someone that's also on this smaller title, and there's like just kind of like that magic and that spark between you where it's like, oh, real recognize real, how cool was that? It definitely feels like we are in a golden era of like indie comics where no 2 books are the same. Like this doesn't sound like anything else that's on the shelves. And I kind of like finding these titles where it's like, all right, Mad Cave is doing this. You got Dave Johnson, who's a powerhouse in his own way. Jimmy Palmiotti's a huge name. And, you get this really interesting perspective or a premise. Yeah, I'm here for it. So,
too.
Oh, the cover is fantastic. And I guess I should say I'll have links to all of these picks in the show notes if you want to check them out for yourself. But once again, Ben's first pick is Pop Kill #1. Let's go on to his second pick right here.
Next up, Distillery presents Through Red Windows #1. Writer Ram V teams up with iconic artist Joelle Jones for what promises to be a terrifying modern horror story. If you've ever read any Ram V stories in the past, you know he is the man for the horror job. And yes, usually I'm not a huge fan of the magazine-sized comics. However, a magazine-sized Joelle Jones art comic, yep, they got me with this one.
Love the honesty right there. And his Ram V, I mean, more than likely out of all of his picks, this one so far has definitely piqued my interest for the creative team. I think Ram V is one of the best writers out right now. He tends to like really go deep on his topics. He brings like philosophical questions into the mix, and he's just like an introspective thinker. And I think he brings that to comic books. And I don't know, his comics to me are intelligent and they feel like prestige. You know, like when you read it, you're like, this is something I can share with someone that might look down on comics or something.
Yeah.
What do you think about this pick?
Definitely high art comics from Ram V. Every
Yeah.
time, right? His Detective Comics is going to be so good as an omnibus. Like,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, you know, I don't really do horror. This one certainly looks horrific in the best ways, right?
Yeah.
But Joelle Jones, I haven't seen Joelle Jones interiors since Wonder Girl. I think she's done stuff since, but that's
I
the
think
last
she
time.
did. I think the most recent thing I remember from her is like a Catwoman series that was maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
mean, she's fantastic. Like her art is
amazing.
very unique, very like it's got like a kind of scratchy grit. No pun intended. But it's got like a gritty kind of scratchy texture to it.
Yeah, I really like Joelle Jones' art. And then you know this, I don't know. She's gonna be like, this will be things that I don't know that we've seen her draw before, based on the subject matter. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
very interesting to look at, especially in a prestige format. If you're a fan of horror, like I don't see why you wouldn't pick this one up.
Ben made a joke here. He said it. He's made it. He's let it be known that he is not the biggest fan of magazine size comics, especially coming from a comic retailer perspective, where it's like those things are hard to store. You know, you got to treat them a little different than single issues. They, you know, like they're the special child. So hearing him say that, you know, like I've gone on record saying this, but this excites me. I'm curious to hear from your perspective. As someone that's like been 5 going on 6 years deep into comic collecting, what's your least favorite thing about comic collecting or new comics or just kind of like this hobby in general? Is there any pain points or, you know, just dislikes so far? Because I have one in mind based on the videos I've watched from you that I think is an easy one.
Storage.
I was gonna say, storage is definitely fair, but I was gonna say, I noticed that you are not the biggest fan of crossovers that bleed into the like regular, you know, like Wonder Woman. I think is a good
Yeah.
example. You're talking about being a big fan of the Tom King Wonder Woman series, except for, you know, the tie-in issues.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's a catch-22 because it's like if the main universe doesn't feel like it has cohesion, like that's one problem. But then it's also a problem when like whatever was going well just gets interrupted. Like Miles Morales is the book that suffers from this the most right now. Like it seems like every 3 issues they're crossing over with something. And we got another crossover coming. Like there's a Spider-Man versus Deadpool, which Cody Ziegler's writing both, so like it might not feel as jarring as say, I don't know, the Carnage War at the beginning of the thing, or Blood Hunt. Like, okay, we're doing great, and then all of a sudden Miles is a vampire, or Gang War. These are all things that interrupted this main run that is only 29 issues deep at this point. So it's like, that's a worse pet peeve of mine than storage for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I think that is definitely on the top of my list as well. And I think a big reason, talking about just kind of moving away from the big two, I think that was a big reason, is that it felt that they were ramping up crossovers, big events, and all of the mainline titles I was reading was like just being interrupted, or I had to buy additional issues. You don't really see that much with indie publishers or smaller publishers because they don't have, years of continuity. They don't have like recurring crossovers and intermingling of titles. So, when you find one title, that's what you're reading.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyways, that second pick from Ben was called Through Red Windows. It's coming out through Distillery. It comes out February 26th, so the same day as Pop Kill. It's being written by Ron V with art by Joel Jones. Once again, final order cutoff for these two books is Monday, February 3rd. And last but not least on Ben's list, he's already given us a Mad Cave book, a Distillery book. It wouldn't be right if Ben didn't give us a big 2 pick. And this is, I guess, spoiler, this is a big 2 pick from Ben. Here we go.
Last but not least, Marvel presents Doctor Strange of Asgard, #1. Did you know Dr. Doom tricked Doctor Strange into surrendering his mantle as Sorcerer Supreme? Yep, see Marvel's Blood Hunt series. Now, Doom is ruling the world and Strange is job hunting? Maybe Asgard needs a new sorcerer. Oh wait, isn't there a guy named Loki there? I'm personally excited to see how the Doctor, without his mantle, moves forward in the new Marvel Universe. Get Doctor Strange of Asgard added to your pull list ASAP. Well, another week has come and gone, and I'm still Ben K, representing Gotham City Limit. Whether you live in Jacksonville or beyond, unleash your spirit, let your passion transmit. Do what we do and take it to the limit. Peace.
Oh, shit. All right, really quick. Gotham City Limit is undergoing some changes this year. They bought the store that's right next to them, so they're getting more room. I think they're going to, they're just going to have more room. They're going to rearrange the shop. I think they've also upgraded like their POS systems. What I did not know that was added to that list is a brand new outro from Ben. I have never heard him sign off that way. But if there's one thing Ben can do is come up with a sign off as well as an intro. That was well said, Ben. Thank you so much. I'll probably give you a lot of shit when I see you at the shop this week. But that was Ben's final pick was Doctor Strange of Asgard #1. It comes out March 5th. It's got the same final order cutoff. It's just one of those weird comic shop there. Man, BJ, I'm curious to hear is when you got into comic books, was there anything that just confused the hell out of you? Because when I have to explain final order cutoffs as well as previews and how they order books, comic shops order books 3 months in advance and all of that, I sound like a madman. The reactions I get from someone, say like my wife, who works in a very organized industry like logistics, which I'm sure they've got its own confusion. But she looks at me like, how do y'all make any money? How do y'all run a business? When you were really getting into this industry and comics, did you have any of those moments coming from the music industry that you were like, that is run really weird?
Yeah. So, the series that got me into comics was House of X, Powers of 10.
Mhm.
And that was the first time somebody was like, hey, do you want to start a pull list? I was like, what is that? Right. But it was because of that series. And they were like, hey, which covers do you want us to pull? And I was like, they were doing these really cool connecting variants. I was like, give me the connecting. That sounds fun. Right. So I go to the shop, the next week or maybe 2 weeks later or whatever to pick up the issues. And they give me an A cover. And I'm like, oh no, I asked for the connecting. And the dude calls the manager on the phone and is like, hey, box number such and such says they asked for connecting. And the manager on speakerphone says, just because they asked for it doesn't mean they get it. And I was like, what? That is the weird. What are we talking about? And,
Wow.
I don't know how long it took me before someone explained oh no, we ordered these books weeks ago. So whatever, if you didn't order it before final order cutoff, it's not guaranteed for you.
Okay. Good to know. All right. So good to know that final order cutoff is just confusing to everybody sometimes. Okay. But anyways, Doctor Strange of Asgard #1 comes out March 5th. If you want to get that guaranteed in your pull list, got to tell your local comic shop by February 3rd. This title is being written by Derek Landy with art by Carlos Magno, who's a fantastic artist at that. I guess, BJ, any thoughts on this pick?
Shouldn't say it like that so quickly. It's definitely a book I'm not buying.
I love the honesty.
because again, right, like just the events, they just get so big and sprawling. And it's like, I'm gonna buy One World Under Doom. I'm not gonna need every tie-in book. I'm not a big Doctor Strange guy anyway. I'm gonna read One World Under Doom, whatever the 6 issues that Ryan North is writing.
Mhm.
And everything else I'll get in trades or I'll see on Marvel Unlimited. Something cool will happen. It'll get spoiled 2 weeks before it happens. And then I'll get the trade 3 weeks after. So
Yeah, this is definitely a title that or any of these like One World Under Doom tie-ins.
mhm.
It's something that I hope just gets included in maybe a hardcover or collected edition that I will probably pick up or read on the Hoopla app. One of those two, for sure.
Sure.
Just being more, like I said, this year is the year of me being more price conscientious, more space conscientious, and just more conscientious about the books that I pick up. So I think out of these three, though, if I'm being honest and realistic about what I will probably pick up and give a shot, it probably goes to Through Red Windows, just for the Rom V connection, the Joel Jones. I personally do love me a good magazine size comic book. I actually have a magazine size short box just in the cases of these. And Distillery has been kind of like really impressive with their offerings as of lately. So I think realistically, I'll probably check out Through Red Windows. BJ, I guess any of these three like pique your interest that you might realistically check out or pick up?
Of the 3, I'd probably pick up Pop Kill. Mad Cave doesn't miss.
All right. That's fair. That was actually my 1B choice, just for the Jimmy Palmiotti connection right there. So, anyways, with that being said, those were Ben's top 3 picks. Like I said, I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Check them out. Go to your local comic shop. Tell them about them. If any of these pique your interest and you want to buy them. Big shout outs to Ben at Gotham City Limit. Glad to be able to do this segment again with my guy BJ Kicks at that. And I guess, BJ, with that being said, man, I think we can probably call this episode a wrap. I promised myself, because last time we recorded, I think we went on for like 2+ hours.
Yep.
And I don't know if no one knows this, but we're recording this episode almost into 11 p.m. at night on a school night. We both got work in the morning, but I have no shadow of a doubt that we probably could go on for like another hour.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I guess, do you have any parting words or shameless plugs before we wrap up? Do you want to say, what do you got on the horizon? How about that? What do you got on the horizon for Comics Are Dope? You got any cool or dope interviews coming up? Any interesting video ideas?
I'm winging it right now, man. We're like 2 weeks away from this baby coming, so I've been hesitant to schedule interviews.
That's fair.
I do know I got Joe Casey on the books sometime in the next couple of weeks, but I've actually not released a podcast episode this year yet, which that's on me. There's definitely something I could have released, but anyway, I'm still going to be doing the pull list every week, and that's probably the only thing that's guaranteed until like early March. But I've got a lot of things that I'm working on the room tour. We're about 90% done with this new office. I just got to hang all the artwork and bring my action figures back out, which is probably the hardest part about all of it, but whatever. Room tour is coming. There will be some interviews coming, and I'm working on the DC Style Guide overview is coming. I got a comic haul from January, like the I Can Finally Spend Money Again haul is
There
coming.
we go.
And then that's probably it as far as things I know are coming. But Black History Month is next week, and I got to do something because who else is going to do it?
I will. I'll probably do something this. Honestly, I have been thinking about maybe trying to do an episode, whether that be like with a creator or maybe a pick a book and just do like a book review. I think that's what I want to start doing again this year, is more comic story centric episodes. So maybe we can figure something out. I'll have you back on the podcast. But BJ, this has been fantastic. Best of luck with the rest of the move, but most importantly, with the arrival of the new baby. Congratulations, brother. I'm extremely happy and excited for all the things you got going on in life. Ladies and gents, this is the Shortbox Podcast, and we just finished talking with Brandon Jackson about his awesome YouTube channel, Comics Are Dope. Give that a subscribe if you're looking for more great videos and podcasts about comics or interviews with comic creators. It'll be well worth your time, I promise you that. I'll have links to his channel, his website, as well as BJ's Instagram in the show notes. He's a good follow. Do me a favor, go check him out. And with that being said, BJ, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me, man.